Did you know that even an unborn child could have his identity stolen by scammers? Child ID theft has grown tremendously thanks to social media, increased use of technology, data breaches, and so much more. Well, here to help families better protect themselves, let's welcome our state's Attorney General, Alan Wilson. We're so grateful that you could be here with us today.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
So people say, an unborn child, how is that even possible? How does one get a hold of an unborn child's information to then exploit them and use their information?
Well, listen, from the moment you're born, you're filling out forms at the hospital. And obviously you want to protect that information. And obviously, within weeks you're assigned a social security number. I was reading of a story recently where a 14-year-old child learned that they'd had hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit taken out in their name from the age of 4. And it was 10 years. They had all these bad lines of credit and they were only 14 years old.
No. And that makes life very difficult later on. And I want to talk about what some of those implications are, because it's not just, oh, this is never going to happen to me, but they could have serious implications when it comes to applying for financial aid, trying to buy a car, a number of things. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But what can parents do to better protect their child? I mean, you still have to fill out those forms just the same.
You do.
But what do you do then in that case?
Well, and the way I like to try to talk to parents and anybody dealing with the internet is, and you and I were talking earlier, we have become so comfortable in our society with the internet. And I remember being in the 1990s when AOL and dial-up internet was the thing. You were so cautious about not having any avatars, not having any screen names that identified who you are.
That's right.
A couple of years ago, I was interviewing an employee in my Internet Crime Against Children Task Force, and he was an IT guy, and he said, it's interesting that y'all are out there protecting online information, but for me to apply for this job, I had to provide my social security number, my driver's ID, my date of birth, my home address, and he's right. I'm like, you're right. So not only have we gotten comfortable as a society, many government organizations require you to provide information as a condition of employment or of getting access to some
background
benefit.
checks.
Background checks.
People need to know your background, and in order to do so, usually it's a social security number, right?
Yes. Absolutely, and I tell people, if you can avoid giving out social security numbers, then you should. I mean, I have in the past, when someone asks for a social security number for me or my children, I'm like, can I give you my last 4?
Okay.
That is one thing that I do. Now, sometimes if it's a government agency and they have securities in place, that's fine. But what I want parents at home to understand is that 1 in 50 children, this is a study done a few years ago, 1 in 50 children will have their identities stolen. That's not that's a lot.
That is a lot.
1 in 50 children.
Certainly.
75% of those kids actually know the person who stole their identity. It could be a family friend.
That was another statistic that blew my mind, that most of the cases involve someone you know. Who's stealing your information that you would know? Is this a family member or a friend? What is this?
It could be somebody. It could be somebody in the school district. It could be somebody at a doctor's office. It could be somebody. I mean, it could be just it could be a distant relative. Parents need to be self-aware. First off, kids are very trusting. And here's the thing: my kid, like the other night, was on his Xbox playing with another kid in Arkansas, and they give up information. They might give their name, and they might know the state, and they somehow might slip up what their birthday is, and from that you can identify. You can zero in on somebody. So be very careful with what information you're providing online. You should buy identity protection software if you can. Parents need to have conversations with their kids about how they communicate and be very careful with the information that you're sharing online. And parents are sometimes the ones that are culprits. They give out too much information.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a term that was coined back in 2010 called sharenting, the portmanteau of sharing and parenting, because you're proud of your child, you want to show them off, but that gives too much information to people who want to do nefarious things with it.
Think about this, taking a picture of your child saying, I'm so proud of my little Susie Smith, and you're taking a picture of her, for winning the 8th grade spelling bee, and you're taking a picture of her in front of the high school or the middle school sign. You've identified her first, last name, what grade she's in, and what middle school she's in.
So now you know what town she lives in, so now you know what neighborhood she lives in. It all gets zeroed down.
An innocent Facebook photo or Instagram picture has just betrayed a lot of information that you never intended.
Really quick, 30 seconds left. What are some of the signs to know that your child's ID has been compromised?
One thing you could do, obviously, if you're getting if you start getting mail, spam calls for your child, obviously they're on the grid somewhere. If they've applied for a credit card or they got a loan out for a house.
Hey, you've been pre-approved, little Susie.
Susie's 3 years old, but she's now getting credit card things in the mail. That might be a sign that, okay, somebody's got little Susie or little Johnny's information, and so you may want to go have that looked into.
And you can also freeze your child's credit, and you can do so in a way where you would then, as the parent or custodian, can have it reinstated, but that also further protects because you can't temporarily unfreeze it. So I hear that that's another way that you can help. Well, thank you so much for covering this topic, so important, and especially as school's getting started, but we do need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about another investigation through your office that you're conducting right now here in South Carolina. We're going to do that in 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for sticking with us. We're joined by South Carolina's Attorney General Alan Wilson, and you've recently launched an investigation into a campaign fundraising platform that is now being looked at for committing potential fraud. It's also being investigated up on the Capitol. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about what this is.
So first off, I want to relabel it not an investigation, but a preliminary inquiry, because everyone has a presumption of innocence. We have to look into allegations before we go full-blown criminal investigation. But there's a fundraising platform called ActBlue, and I know there are, and it is more of a Democratic fundraising platform. There are Republican fundraising platforms, and if we get allegations of them, we would certainly look at them as well. I mean, this is not a partisan look, but we have gotten a number of allegations from around the country, but also we're getting some calls here in South Carolina where people giving abnormally large amounts of money, and they're in occupations that like someone giving $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 and they're a cashier, or somebody giving $7.73 5,000 times, and of course I'm being very general because this is an open review, we're open inquiry right now, but it's called smurfing. It's like you're creating a straw man, and then you're taking tons of big dollar donors, and then you're giving it through small dollar donors. Like, so maybe you go to ActBlue, you contribute $5 to a local candidate, and then the allegation, I'm not saying this is what happened, but the allegation would be that someone took your name and your information there and took lots of other dollars and had you give to other candidates around the country as if you gave it. So
smurfing, it doesn't necessarily mean that we were just talking about ID theft and compromising of personal information, but so are you saying that the money isn't necessarily coming out of my account, but someone is using my identity to funnel money into this website?
You are now a straw person.
I'm a straw person. I've heard of straw buyers, like in the event of, say, a foreclosure purchase or something like that, where you don't want the person with the money bags to know is going to buy this property, but you're going to use someone else in that position.
Let's say you have someone that gives $1 million to this organization, or they get $1 million, but you can't give $1 million to a campaign or campaign limits. But I can give $1 million to 10,000 people who are small dollar donors and funnel it through their identities to these various campaigns as if they had given the money. That is actually illegal at the federal and the state level. So we're not saying that has happened. We're saying that we're seeing suspicious conduct, suspicious activity that we want to get to the bottom of. And we've already had attorneys for this company.
You sent a letter to the CEO. Who is the CEO, by the way, and have they responded?
Yes, their attorneys have responded. ActBlue's attorneys have responded to us, and we are setting up a meeting with them. And again, as of right now, they are open to having a conversation. Again, we just want to verify, trust but verify. And of course, if anyone sees any other fundraising platforms out there for any political parties that you feel are breaking the law, then obviously we're happy to take a look at that. But we want to make sure that people's identities, to stay in theme today, are not being abused for political purposes.
Indeed. And when you go to make a donation on a website, and let's say you do it through your credit card, normally it asks for the CVV number, which is those three little numbers on the back of your credit card. And from what I understand is ActBlue was not requiring those up until, I think, prior to the weekend. Yeah, and it was recent that they changed the rules.
The state of Texas actually brought a case against them. A CID issued a civil investigative demand, and they actually ended up changing their practice in Texas. So we're looking at what Texas did, and we're going to see if that's an issue here in South Carolina. Again, we're at the very beginning stages of this. And we'll obviously keep you, up to date on what we do.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that. And because you mentioned if there was an issue with a Republican fundraiser, have you had anything come across your desk?
Not yet.
Not
yet. I mean, right now it was just ActBlue. That happened to be the big platform that a lot of people were calling us about, saying, hey, you need to look into this. And we looked at what they were alleging. We're like, hey, this doesn't look right. It could be completely legitimate. We just don't know yet. And so that's why we're looking into it.
I see. Okay. And do you know how, to the tune of of how much money has been raised through ActBlue?
Oh, nationally, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what we've heard. Yeah. So it's a lot of money at stake as well. All right. Well, thank you so much, Attorney General, for joining us. We do appreciate your time. We're back after this.